Watersboro, Vermont. Population 857. Part of our heritage is an heirloom vegetable which we are very fond of. The Gilfeather turnip, rooted in Wadsboro.
Back in 1800 and whatever, a man came to the town by the name of Gilfeather. He brought along some turnip seeds and put them in the ground. That's how the Gilfeather turnip came to our tiny town. Now I like my turnips and I like my turnip greens, and the Gilfeather turnips are the best I've ever seen. You can have your purple tops and your rutabagas too, but I'll take a Gilfeather turnip in my venison stew. You can eat them boiled, you can eat them mashed, you can even eat them in your hash. Gilfeather turnips, the best I've ever seen. Gilfeather turnips and Gilfeather turnip days. Gilfeather turnips in Wadsboro, Vermont, USA. 05355.
For next year.
WALESREAD. Well, the Gilfeather turnip is a light-fleshed turnip rather than the yellow-fleshed rutabaga.
Don't melt too much to plant when it's too cold. You gotta wait till the ground is warm. I didn't think it was ever gonna get warm this spring.
Well, they're much sweeter flavored than the yellow-fleshed rutabagas. The turnip is a biennial. In other words, the seed you plant this year grows a tuber or root. That same root back in the ground next year will come up and flower and produce seed.
The deer we have really like his turnip, you know.
All turnips should stay in the field until we've had a good hard frost, and that helps to sweeten the root. Everybody planted a few of those turnips usually years ago on the farms.
Wills makes all this stuff for boxes and transplants, and puts them out in a greenhouse and keeps them busy.
Well, it's simply a little serving tray.
You know, the only reason he raises it is he gives them to Grace Cottage and all his friends that come around, and he couldn't eat no part of what he plants.
Well, John Gilfeather and his brother Will came to this Gilfeather farm, so-called, many years ago.
The Gilfeather family we know came over from Ireland, and the town records show that John's father bought the first piece of property up here that became known as the Gilfeather farm in 1870. It's pretty amazing to think that the Gilfeathers cleared this land by hand. Must have been pretty tough people. Well, we have a picture of the parents, Felix and Maria. He's born in Manchester. John Gilfeather was Felix and Maria's firstborn. He was born in 1865.
An old farmer. Well, ordinary.
I was a very small child when I knew this Gilfeather man. Quite slender.
Well, he was tall and skinny, as I remember him. He was very soft-spoken.
He stayed a bachelor, as did his brother William, better known as Willie, who was quite a character. The story that I've always been told is that he used to use a cart like this to take his turnips down to Brattleboro in Massachusetts to sell. Felix Gilfeather bought the first acreage in 1870. In 1915, John took over. He sold to Hecht, who was a Columbia professor, math professor, in 38, and they sold to Myers in 44, and then Myers sold to my family in 1950. It originated up here on this farm with John Gilfeather.
There's been rumored that originally it was a sweet German turnip.
Nobody knows if the Gilfeathers brought the turnip seed with them from Europe, or if John Gilfeather developed his own hybrid.
Why would he concentrate a lot of his precious time on a turnip?
Because he probably wanted to make a better turnip.
This Schmidt down here in Dummerston claimed that they had acquired the exclusive rights to the Gilfeather turnips.
Some people developed the impression that the turnip originated with the Schmidts. We give them a great deal of credit because they went through all the legal process.
Yes, we became involved with it because a neighbor of ours had some seed that he managed to keep in hiding, as it were, and he gave us some seed to start in our garden.
The seed kept well because my father lost the seed one year, and we had a friend that he'd given seed to, and the seed was quite old, and they didn't know whether they'd come up or not, so we started some in a little pan, and they came up, but they were real old seed.
And we liked it so much, we thought that maybe this had something going for it, so we decided to take some seed or to grow some seed, took it down to Agway right here in Brattleboro, and put it up in little packets, coin packets, and about 50 of them, and they sold immediately, and we thought, oh, this is great. And John Gilfeather used to take the turnip each fall by horse and carriage, or horse and wagon, take it to Brattleboro. So all the people in Brattleboro became familiar with it.
In West Brattleboro, bought them by the bushel. People came in and bought them.
And so when they could get the seed for it, they were just ecstatic and wanted to get some more.
People just are drawn to the Gilfeather turnip.
Mrs. Schmidt was in the laundromat down in Brattleboro one time when my wife was in there doing laundry, and they got into a discussion and quite a heated argument over it because my wife's folks had always used Gilfeather turnips for years before the Schmidts ever came into this area.
I think they felt that we were trying to garner the Gilfeather turnip for ourselves, which was far from the case. All the packets said right on there that it was originated in the state of Vermont by John Gilfeather. In the meantime, Gordon Hayward, who was writing articles for Horticulture Magazine, and it came out in Horticulture Magazine in, I believe it was October of 1981.
Had lots and lots of letters, yeah.
We got something like 2,200 requests for the seed.
Responses were from every state in the country, except South Dakota. And in the following summer, after the article appeared, I saw on the streets, Main Street in Brattleboro, a car with a South Dakota license plate, so I ran over. I had some Gilfeather seed in my pocket and gave them a packet. So it went to every state in the country.
We felt that if it was going to go nationwide, that it needed to be protected so it didn't lose its identity for Vermont. Now, we could not trademark the seed itself. Only John Gilfeather could have done that. But we were able to trademark the word Gilfeather. And if you notice on the packets, the little registered R is behind the word Gilfeather, not behind Gilfeather turnip.
The seed and the plant that we grew, the turnip itself, is in the vaults in Fort Collins, Colorado, in USDA's, facilities there. It is the Gilfeather turnip. There's no other turnip like the Gilfeather. If it hadn't if we hadn't registered the Gilfeather name, any seed company, any large seed company could take the seed and put its own name on it and come out with a turnip very much like Gilfeather. Gilfeather could be no more. So
I guess we just have a strong feeling about things that are Vermont. And we think that something as unique as this, even though it's a lowly turnip, ought to be preserved.
Mr. Finney had a turnip, and it grew behind the barn. It grew there, and it grew there, and the turnip did no harm. It grew there, and it grew there, till it could grow no longer. Then Mr. Finney dug it up and put it in the cellar. It stayed there, and it stayed there till it began to rot. Then Mrs. Finney took it up and put it in the pot. She boiled it, and she boiled it as long as she was able. Then Mrs. Finney took it up and put it on the table. Then the family, they all sat down to sup. They ate and ate and ate and ate and ate the turnip up.
Somebody once asked me why I didn't bring my cordless phone down here. And I said, are you kidding? I come down here to get away from the world.
I used to work down south behind the hosiery counter. I did, but don't anymore. A woman came in and asked for some garters. I asked her what kind she wore. Oh, rubber, she said. So rubber I did, but I don't anymore.
Inch by inch, row by row, someone bless these seeds I sow. Someone warm them from below. The rain comes tumbling down.
Well, I would if I could. If I couldn't, how could I? You wouldn't, could you? I couldn't, could you?
That's Vermont sky, you know. There aren't too many places that are as blue as that, they say. Well, good morning. Here we are back in the garden again at the Gilfeather farm. The turnips have been sprouted for probably a couple of weeks. The seedling is getting big enough now so that you need to thin them out, and I've got to thin them out to about 4 or 5 inches in between each. My grandchildren are here today working in the garden. We have Rachel, who's 6, and Rebecca, who's 10, and Malachi, who's 7 months.
I was born in 1917. Some in here, cabbages. Little cabbages they're gone. Deer getting in here. I ain't got a fence in. I don't have a fence in there this year. This fence? Yeah. It's this guy coming along, Misha, yeah?
My name is Misha Golfman. During camp, we do community service. We think of being of service all the time. I like to be connected to the old people. Just hearing Britt talk about his life was the most amazing thing.
Finished the whole thing up in a short time with the help of the boys. These are cabbages. These are turnips. Lots of top, but not turnips. The turnip is still got to grow, but they have time to grow.
Come on, Martha, come on out here. My name is Gladys Bruce. Come on. I was born January 3rd, 1920. And we used to sell the turnips in the fall to help pay the taxes on the place. So we had them for vegetables and also help pay the bills because we had to have some way to pay taxes. We had a turnip grinder, which we threw the small turnips in and ground them by hand. The small ones that we couldn't sell, we fed to the animals. But we never fed them to cows till after we milked because they would taint the milk. Well, we tried to protect it from the deer, but a lot of times we had to shoot them to get rid of them. And then, of course, we had the meat, which was helpful. We had a shed that was down below the patch, and Dad and I used to go up in there. He couldn't hear very good, so I used to nudge him because I could hear him coming in, and I held a flashlight, and then he would shoot, and we usually got one. And then we dressed it off and we canned it because we had no refrigeration. And it helped out a lot on the food supply in the winter.
I don't mind if the deer eat the tops, but I object when they start chewing on the turnip itself.
Moose. The moose is a pretty big one.
Well, the goats got out. They didn't eat them, but they tread them all in, so they didn't mount too much.
Well, I see there's 2 or 3 plants out here, but the woodchuck got most of them. And now the bear has knocked the beehive to pieces out beyond the barn there. It's a disaster area. Yeah. Oh, it's been a bad year. I threw in the sponge, as they say.
If you wanted to raise some seeds for next year, you wouldn't cut the roots off. Worth it? Sure.
You peek down under the leaves, you can see we got a couple of big ones on the ends. Here it comes. That's a pretty good looking Gilfeather. Oh, now that's a nice shape. There's a story that John Gilfeather would take the tops off before he sold them so that nobody could grow them. But you see, the point is, even if you cut way down here, if you planted this again next spring, new shoots will come from the top of it and produce the seeds. When you cook them, you shouldn't cook them in aluminum, any kind of old aluminum pan. Use stainless steel or enamel because they'll discolor. And don't peel them until just before you're going to cook them because they will turn brownish. When we get a good sized one, we just kind of like to see how much it may have weighed. Pretty good turnips. Come on in the house and I'll give you a taste of one. Look at that white inside. Okay, now for the taste test. Try a bite. Good. Of course it is. It's a Gilfeather turnip.
I peel them and cook them like you do potato. Then mash them and have salt and pepper and butter. And there's a lot of times if I have a little left over, I'll mix it with my mashed potato.
Well, I peel it, wash it a little bit, put a little salt on it, slice it, and put a little salt on it and eat it raw. That's the way I like it.
When I used to grind them, I used to take pieces of them, chew on them while I was grinding the rest of the turnips. They were nice and sweet, and I enjoyed them.
I eat with my daughters, and I eat with my sister, and I eat with my mother-in-law. They all cook them different, and I like them everywhere I get them.
Hi, my name is Greg Parks, longtime chef of the Four Columns Inn, where today we will demonstrate cooking Gilfeather turnips. Cut the top off, then the bottom. Slices quite easily with a sharp knife. Cut the turnip into quarters and then into smaller chunks. Add some butter to the pan and slowly saute onions. Now that the onions have softened, we're adding the turnips Also some vegetable stock, and some good bird stock. I'm also adding some poblano pepper puree. This soup is very versatile. There's lots of ways to approach it. You could go from just something very simple and mild to take, after it's puree, taking it and adding lobster meat or shrimp or pheasant, herbs, pesto. Okay, I'm adding some salt, another 2 cups of water. We'll let that simmer for about 35, 40 minutes. An hour at a simmer, and we're going to take it over to the food processor and puree the entire batch until smooth and silky and creamy. Smells good. Smells sweet. Puree. It's a little on the thick side. I'm going to add some half and half. I think it's ready for a taste test. Delicious.
So you're looking at the mountain from the field in which John Gilfeather used to raise his turnips. And this mowing's up above the house. And I don't know whether he planted the whole field or just a section of it or what. It'd be an awful lot of field to put seed in. It's the Gilfeather farm, as I like to keep that name going.